each month the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases the newest data on the Consumer Price Index. And I wanted to show you what that release actually looks like. I've gone out to the website and we can see here the release. This is the release that was on June for May of 2014. And we can see right here it starts off, it's embargoed until a certain time, and then when it starts off, when it's released, it says the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers, which is CPIU, and this is the most common referred to. When we refer to the CPI, there's a number of different ways that we can measure consumer prices or other ways that we can measure inflation, but this is the most common. It says that it increased 0.4% in May on a seasonally adjusted basis. And then it goes on to say that over the last 12 months, over the last year, the all-item index increased 2.1% before seasonal adjustment. Now, seasonal adjustment gets at one of the issues that we have, which is there are changes in prices related to energy that happen all the time, because in cold weather we use certain types of energy more than we do in hot weather. There are certain types of seasonal adjustments for any number of goods and categories. Consumer goods that are spent, where we spend a lot of, where prices might increase around the holidays, and we expect that to happen, so we want to adjust the numbers to reflect that. So this is saying that these have not yet been seasonally adjusted. I would expect a small amount, but we can take this and we can look at this and we can say, over the last year, prices have increased on average about 2.1%. And then we've got all of this data down here that kind of goes into more specificity about what's going on. And you can see we start getting into some of the categories. And this is, if you remember back to our example here where we were saying, well, here's the basket of goods, but it really depends what's in the basket and how much those individual pieces are, how much they're weighted in essence, right? The quantity here is the weight, is what we were looking at. We want to think about what is the weight there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll down to the bottom of this press release, because at the end of each of these press releases, and they go through all the data in words, and we can just go out here to the actual table itself, and I'm going to have this pull up real quick. And here we can see this is CPIU, and this is for May 2014, and it tells us that 1982 to 84, this is the base year is equal to 100. So there's a few things that are going on. I'm just going to scroll down so we can get a little more of this on the screen. There's a few things. This is the 2.1% annual change that was just being talked about. That prices increased for all items 2.1%. And here the relative importance is 100%. So this relative importance is the weight that is put on this item in the basket of goods. So for example, food in general is weighted 13.855% of the total consumption of an individual, of the typical person. And so you can see those percentages all the way down through here, right? So this isn't another, so this is kind of the overarching category here. 8.196% is the food at home. Cereals make up 1.128% of that, right? So you can kind of get into a little bit of the percents here, and you can see there's really some really small things that we're tracking. We track a lot of it. White bread specifically, which makes up, or bread, that makes up 0.227% of the basket of goods. Cupcakes and cookies, which make up 0.185% of the basket of goods. Obviously, there's a lot in the basket for a typical consumer of what they would consume in a year. And we have to take into account that when we say the typical consumer, some of those consumers might have children, some of them might not, right? So we have to weight that accordingly. We have to weight that appropriately. And some of them might be older, some of them might be younger. So the two numbers that we'd be interested in is that this was the other number that was reported, 0.4%, which was the April to May number. And what I just want to do, if we'll kind of focus in here just to keep things simple, we've got the weight in this category, and then in this category is the unadjusted percent change, annual percent change, and we can see what prices are increasing. What I want you to do is compare it to this 2.1%, because as we scroll down here, we can see some things that really stand out. And hopefully one of the things you notice is that all of these meats, everything in this meat category, right? Meats, pork, ham, all of this is kind of almost 10% or higher. 10% change, 15% change in what is this? Bacon and related products, a 15.3% increase over the last year in those prices. Food prices are one of the things that comes up often when it's talked about in CPI, and when we talk about cost of living adjustments, where we adjust for the increase in prices. There are certain things that are increasing much faster than other things, and these meats, right, these are the types of things that people would tend to consume a little bit more of at a certain time in life versus another time in life. And so these increases in prices would hit you at a different time. If we kind of go through here as well, we can see eggs have had a big increase in prices over the last year. And then down here we can also see citrus fruits as well have really gone up a lot, and oranges have gone up a lot. And we kind of know from supply and demand that there has been in essence there is a disease that's going around the orange crop that is cutting the orange crop down, and it's really starting to increase prices. We're actually seeing that reflected right here in the CPI as well, as we would expect. And so all of these are food items, and if I continue scrolling down, we can start to get into some of the energy items as well. Fuel, oil, and gasoline. And gasoline has increased, all types have increased 2.3% over the last year. All of these are relative, these aren't too much, too high. What we will tend to see though is propane, kerosene, firewood, 6.6%, and this tends to be home heating oil, right? This tends to be one of those types of issues where you might be using more of this when it's cold. And the winter of 2014 was incredibly cold, so there was probably likely some increased pricing as a result of this. I would also just highlight over here, when we go over here to the seasonally adjusted, we can see this is a negative 1.3% for the month from April to May. And you would expect that to decline because there would be less need to heat your house or heat your home with these types of goods. So I just want to kind of show how these numbers reinforce the way that we think about what actually happens in the economy. I can also scroll down and we can see things that are decreasing in prices, where we're seeing some decreased prices for appliances, major appliances, laundry equipment. The price of laundry equipment has decreased 7.5% over the last year. Dishes and flatware, it's decreased 10.2%. So I just want to show you kind of how prices can both increase and decrease within the overall basket. Televisions, for example, have decreased by 14%. There's a lot of competition in that market, and we are getting right. I mean, it's all about internet connectivity and processing power at this point for televisions as well. And you can see the weight that all of this have on the basket. We won't go through all of this, but I would encourage you, if you're interested in this type of thing, to go out and actually read the report, because you'll get a good feel for what's actually going on in the economy. You see these things, these stories that will pop up in things like the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal, and this is really what we're getting at. When you have a good feel for this, one of the things that can help us when we're thinking about policy and how we should address inflation, and if it's something that matters more towards certain individuals versus other individuals, the breakdown of inflation really does matter, because while the overall number could be 2% and prices have increased 2%, there might be parts of it that are really hurting specific groups. And so we just want to be aware of that as well when we're looking at things like inflation, anytime we're looking at these types of numbers in a macroeconomic sense. And as you can see, this goes into full details all the way down. You can see something like healthcare as well, motor vehicle maintenance, all types of categories that we take into account for the CPI measurement each month.